One rifle made every army in the world obsolete almost overnight. Yet most people have never heard its name or understand how it quietly changed the course of human history. This weapon does not dominate Hollywood films. It is rarely displayed as a symbol of power, and it never became a legend in popular culture. But within a single decade, every major military on Earth was forced to rebuild itself because of it. This is the story of the Lebel rifle and the invisible revolution it unleashed. For centuries, warfare followed a familiar pattern. When soldiers fired their weapons, they revealed themselves immediately. Black powder filled the air with thick white smoke, dense clouds that exposed positions after a single shot. Entire armies moved inside their own visibility. Battlefields were loud, chaotic, and visible. Commanders could see where fire was coming from. Defenders could track attackers by smoke alone. Stealth was nearly impossible. This limitation was accepted as unavoidable, a basic rule of war, until it suddenly wasn't. The change did not begin with a general or a weapons designer. It began in a laboratory. In the 1880s, France was still recovering from defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, its military confidence shaken, its rivals growing stronger. Inside a government laboratory, a chemist named Paul Vier was working quietly, not on weapons, but on chemistry. Vier was trying to improve nitrocellulose compounds, searching for a safer, more stable explosive, primarily for civilian use. There was no intention to reshape warfare, no plan to challenge global military doctrine, just chemistry. What Vier discovered in 1884 seemed almost trivial at first, a compound that burned completely without producing visible smoke. No clouds, no lingering haze, nothing to betray its use. To most observers, this looked like a minor improvement, cleaner, more efficient, not revolutionary. When the French military was informed, the reaction was muted. Generals focused on artillery, on formations, on tactics refined over centuries. A powder that made less smoke did not seem decisive, but a small group of officers saw something different. They understood that visibility was the battlefield itself, and that removing smoke removed certainty. 2 years later, France introduced a new rifle designed specifically around this smokeless powder, the Lebel rifle. On the surface, it appeared unremarkable, a bolt-action infantry rifle, solid but not extraordinary. Its true power was invisible. French soldiers could fire repeatedly without revealing their positions. Shots came from nowhere. Enemy forces could hear bullets but not see their source. Return fire became guesswork. Defensive lines collapsed under unseen pressure. Traditional formations stopped functioning. The battlefield had changed. For the first time in history, armies could fight without announcing themselves. Smoke no longer marked the front lines. Gunfire no longer painted targets. Combat became uncertain, psychologically destabilizing, and far deadlier. Entire tactical manuals were rendered obsolete. France had achieved something unprecedented, a temporary military advantage rooted in chemistry, not firepower. But then came a decision that altered everything. Rather than guarding the secret, French officials chose to display it. At international exhibitions, foreign observers watched Lebel rifles in action. The demonstrations were meant to intimidate, to showcase superiority. French leaders believed replication would take decades. They underestimated global scientific capacity. The mistake was irreversible. Within months, foreign military chemists began experimenting. Within 2 years, the secret was out. Germany, Britain, Russia, the United States, all developed their own smokeless powder formulations. New rifles followed rapidly. The French advantage disappeared as quickly as it emerged. What should have been dominance became a global transformation. The consequences were profound. Defensive structures that had stood for centuries lost their value. Fortresses built to absorb visible fire no longer worked. Linear formations disintegrated. Soldiers spread out, used terrain, sought concealment. Military engineering changed direction entirely, and so did the soldier's experience. Psychologically, combat became more terrifying. Enemies were no longer seen, only felt. Shots arrived without warning, from unseen positions. Uncertainty replaced visibility. Fear replaced awareness. Modern combat stress began here. The arms race intensified. Once smokeless powder became standard, no nation could afford to fall behind. Military spending rose, research accelerated, suspicion between powers deepened. This invisible innovation helped fuel the tensions that exploded in the early 20th century. World War I did not begin because of the Lebel rifle, but it was fought in a world reshaped by its legacy. Casualties increased dramatically. Firepower became more efficient, and killing became easier at distance, all without spectacle. The impact spread beyond the battlefield. Chemical industries expanded rapidly. Nitrocellulose production improved. Civilian manufacturing adopted military techniques. The boundary between military research and industrial development blurred, a pattern that still defines modern technology. Even today, military doctrine reflects this moment. Concealment, camouflage, dispersed formations, all trace back to the elimination of smoke. The idea that the most decisive advantage is often unseen became a guiding principle. There was also a lesson in secrecy. The French decision to demonstrate their advantage publicly became a case study, a warning about technological exposure. Modern debates about weapons transparency and proliferation still echo this moment. The Lebel rifle is rarely remembered for what it truly did, not because of its shape or its accuracy, but because of the absence it created. No smoke, no warning, no certainty. Its legacy proves that the most transformative weapons are not always the most dramatic. Sometimes they change everything simply by removing what was once taken for granted. And the Lebel was not alone. Decades later, another rifle would emerge, born from desperation during a global war. Its revolution would not come from chemistry, but from materials. A weapon remembered poorly, yet copied endlessly, because its true innovation was once again invisible. The archive continues, uncovering how forgotten technologies reshaped history in silence. Subscribe to Weapon Archive for more stories about the weapons you were never meant to notice.